I'm recording.
Yeah,
Now
glad
we
you're
are.
recording this because this is one of those clips we have to share. But I'm what used to be called a libertarian,
Right.
not a Rothbardian, but a libertarian, which is classical liberal, which means the modern English state, right? Which is the purpose of the rule of law is to drive everyone, the king, the nobility, the parliament, the officers of the government, the middle class and the working class into trades in a market we call the government. And so that we are conducting truthful, reciprocal, and it means non-parasitic trades. That's my objective. But whenever you throughout history, every time you look at the history of law, there is always the reason the law is promoted or expanded or written down is to stop parasitism. Right, and so every time the law is expanded, the current rent-seeking parasites object to having the law expanded, eliminating their parasitism. Well, of course, the academy is going. Of course, they're going to call me a Nazi. That's fine. And when I say, well, there's significant biological differences between us, it does nothing to do with whether we can engage in trade. I mean, most of the time, the middle class, which is only one that matters, wants everyone else to freaking behave. I mean, that's the end result. So the end result is stop lying, cheating, and stealing. Let's get rid of corruption and pay for the ability to redistribute at the maximum level we can. And the only price you have to pay is you have to realize that you can't continually use that surplus to expand the lower classes and the ability to produce surpluses. I mean, it's a scientific statement. It's not one we have choice over. So
yeah, it's a deterministic function, it seems.
You can't get over it. So, I mean, genetics mutation is random. It's more likely to be harmful where there's already randomness. And so genetic load accumulates, and that's what produces classes. That's just a fact. Now, the upper classes, you can preserve genetic advantage, but it's really freaking hard. I mean, it's hard to preserve wealth over 3 generations, and it's hard to produce genetic advantage over 6. Almost impossible. I look my grandmother's 3 generations from non-fake Scottish nobility, right? And I mean, it's not like, oh well, this is one of those. This is like France where you bought a title. No, this is the real thing, and you can lose that in 3 generations. You can lose it in 4. So I mean, it's the same thing with wealth. It's really hard to be rich and have your grandkids still be wealthy. You have to treat it as an industry, which means you don't let people in the family who don't produce inherit, right? It's just the same thing at the corporate level. It's the same thing at the national level. It's the same thing at the level of mankind. I mean, the problem is, can we make the best of what we can given those constraints? And yeah, we can. And paying people who are at a disadvantage, genetic disadvantage in life, so that they're compensated for the fact that their children would be incredibly costly, is just a moral way of solving the problem of one of the laws of nature. I mean, what we shouldn't be doing is paying them to have children, which is what causes decrease in civilizational competitiveness. Anyway,
there you go.
So they're going to call me Nazis.
Yeah, they do. That's right. But it's a funny thing to have triggered it, right? Because it's like, yeah, just like it's an interesting function. It's like, wow, that was like a heavy load, emotional load, unloading. You know what I mean? It's like, man, what is this burden that you're carrying that you have to unload like that? You know what I mean?
Well, it's the burden of truth, right? They can't bear it because they've built, right? So if you've built, it's like a priesthood. If you built the priesthood on a set of lies, well, the academy is built on a set of lies, right? And the psychology and sociology in particular are built on a cult of lies. I mean, they don't call it a replication crisis for nothing. And so, reality is what it is. The second thing is it's easier to create a cult of lies by compartmentalization. So by compartmentalizing the fields, we've made it easier to create cults of lies within each field. So what you're doing is you're creating cults within each discipline instead of using the disciplines to explain the coherence between all the sciences and therefore what is the nature of man. So if I teach you something exclusively and I don't teach you law and economics or in physics, you're going to think that that's actually the answer to the problem. But that answer to the problem in psychology, sociology, political theory, critique theory, these things are in competition with the real world, and they're also in competition with people who know better. So the problem is, how do we stop compartmentalization, right? How do we still advance problems within how do we still advance sciences within a discipline without making them decohere with the rest of reality? And so what's happened is, of course, the Marxist neo-Marxist postmodern program is intentionally designed to create a social construction of decoherence with reality, just like religion was designed to create, at least Abrahamic religions were designed to create a cult of social construction of decoherence with reality. And that's fine as long as there's an aristocracy around. Rather, that's fine as long as the women can believe in silly things if the men are still capable. But the problem is if you succeed at your cult enough, the men are no longer capable, and then you have medieval Europe that has to bring the Vikings in order to conduct the Crusades because they've feminized the entire civilization. Mm. So, just like today, we're falling behind in every competitive measure because of women have feminized through the use of social construction, and the neo-Marxist postmodernists are the cult of social construction of non-correspondence and decoherence with the reality. That's their stated objective. If you read the postmodernists, they're saying there is no truth. All that matters is power. Well, all that matters is power until you have it and bear the consequences of using your power. Well, you bear the consequence, but they might say, yes, but if we reduce civilization back to primitivism so that everybody's equal, that might be fine with me. Because what their real objection is underneath it is they don't want to be left behind in the genetic race, because status was a measure of the genetic race, and their status engine is screaming all the time that they're not playing. Whereas where does status come from? It comes from military, political, commercial, and artistic success. And if you can't compete in those, what do? You develop these subcults and a culture of checking out of the status system. Now, I don't know what's the name for these kids who dress up in plaid shirts and stuff. There's a name for these hipsters. But what they're doing is saying, I'm checking out of a status system I can't compete in. What's Black Lives Matter? They're saying, I'm checking out of a status system I can't compete in. Well, what's Antifa? I'm warring against a status system that I can't compete in. Why? Because they can't compete in the status system, because and that's only because we've destroyed the cultural status systems that made it possible for people in a broad spectrum to cooperate with each other. The lower class, the middle class, we're supposed to be a civil society where we take care of each other, and we do that in different markets. And they've decohered this market in order to search for power. So it's just a power game to replace meritocratic people who produce evolutionary progress and wealth for all with a non-meritocratic system. In other words, it's just the Middle East all over again. They're trying to turn us into the Middle East, which has been successful because this method works. So if we don't have some way, like my method here, of changing the law to stop the possible means of social construction of decoherence or the reality that causes civilizations to collapse, then we're just failing the primary purpose for developing the sciences, which is to prevent that. So give us advantage over nature. Well, was that a rant for 11?
That was a good one. Yes, it's an anti-civilizational function that's occurring, and alienation is the currency of the trade that they are pushing.
Well, I mean, it's true, but you can't. The way you fix it is reciprocal care. It's not reciprocal. It's not intersex, interclass, inter-race warfare.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, I mean, it used to be common that we would talk about the white underclass as the big problem, right? And so we got a black underclass, and as we started talking about them. But, it's not like every group doesn't have a problem of an underclass. The problem is you can use a group, a race, a subrace, a culture can use kinship pressures to force behavior down into lower groups like them. So we could lift up our peasantry with Christianity and with rule of law and with education. But when the other side says, we're not going to lift up into your system because our status can never compete with yours and we perfectly know it, then what are you going to do? You're going to try to undermine the system. When the answer is the Black community was developing an intellectual class, a middle class, and a financial class just fine before the Marxist postmodernists came here and decided that they could do what the Russians did with the peasants and move them into Lithuania and Ukraine and whatever and undermine those European civilizations. They could repeat the process with the blacks. The difference was that capitalism could fix the problem of the blacks because their underclass is simply so large compared to in a pyramid. I mean, there's a shallower pyramid, so it's because their median is lower. So they knew exactly what they were doing to turn the blacks as the vehicle which to destroy the Western, at least America, and as a consequence, destroy the West. So they knew what they were doing. They did it. They wrote down what they were going to do. They came here and they did it. Then they adequately find us. They produced a state within a state because a state within a state is possible to build in a democracy. And the social media tyranny right now, or media tyranny, is just the emergence of a state within a state because our state didn't conduct defense against having the emergence of a state within a state. That's my rant for the day. Now I got to think of, can I think about anything else?
Get back to work.
I have to ask you this question though. This is a curiosity to me. It's like, how in the hell did you start on this project, man? like what was it? What was the, we will objectify it. What did you hope to gain?
Well, I don't work that way. Like, remember, I'm on the spectrum.
Okay.
My manifestation of the spectrum is a kind of obsessive thinking. So when I was a kid, before I go to bed tonight, I have to plan what I was going to think about so I could fall asleep.
Okay.
So I don't have to work at doing this. I have to make sure I have something to do so that the voluminous, steam-powered, loud, painful, overpowering engine in my head doesn't crush me psychologically and emotionally.
And it's like very impressive articulation, and it is no small feat, and eminently useful in my opinion, because it's like everybody's trying to solve the same problem. And you have done a wonderful piece of work in it.
I think I've created the system of measurement by which we can understand each other, right? I mean, especially the psychology. Once you realize that you can't put it in a non-judgmental frame. You have to say the division of labor exists,
okay,
right? We develop sexes to divide the labor.
Mm-hmm.
Men vary more than women in order to form hierarchies and to be able to do different functions.
Right.
Because men are where nature experiments, right? We have the Y chromosome, we experiment more, right? And so that if we're successful, women capture that gene and put it in. So that's what we do. And so once you understand that's it, and women are doing the near term with children, and men are doing the longer term with a tribe of other males, collecting territory, and yes, women, like they're an asset, right? We did that. So that's how we evolved. Now, there are parts of that are unalterable. There are parts of that are compensatable for. We've developed cooperation and law and reciprocity and all these institutions of norms and traditions to make it so that our compatibility, our division of labor is beneficial to everyone. On the other hand, it still happens the fact that by and large, women are more emotional, or excuse me, the female mind is more emotive, and it is easier to get attention in that mind, right? For things that are prey responses. No, in other words, fear, and then it is in the male mind to get attention for predator responses. And so this is what produces our differentiation. Now take developmental degree, how successful your brain matured in utero and in the first 2 years, and add homeostasis to wherever it is, you get Keanu Reeves, who's a physical actor. Right? He's a great example because he's kind, he's thoughtful, he doesn't say anything, he hardly talks at all, and he's incredibly physical and a great physical actor. And he was an athlete. His mind is in the physical part of his brain. It's not in the social, and it's not in the abstract. His mind is back there. He's got that. Now, whether the degree to which that's it determined in utero or developmental in the first 2 years, we don't know.
Right.
It appears to be in utero. I mean, handedness is in utero. If you're not quite baked, you're still left-handed. If you're baked, you're right-handed. I mean, these are just normal things that happen. Because you want anyway, if the reason that speech is in the left side of your brain is because it's predatory, because that's the predatory action that takes care of the actions. So, once you understand these things, you can stop criticizing people for being evil, or like the left thinks we're evil and we think they're stupid. Well, I mean, they're not stupid. They just can't think this way because they're wired the other way. And I mean, we're not evil. We just think about long-term consequences, and they don't. But we place greater weight on consequences than they do. Hmm. So, I mean, I think that this, I assist psychologists once in a while when they call me up and said, I've got this patient. They don't tell me who it is or anything. I got this patient. I have this problem. Can you help me with it? And I'm like, okay. This is what's going on, and explain it like this, and then it'll be a value neutral assessment of their psychology, and they won't try to resist you, right? Because that's what we do, and that's what I sort of don't criticize Jordan Peterson too often, but the reason he's still in this woo-woo nonsense of mythology is because in his discipline, he needs to use suggestion by parallel. Why? Because if I tell you something, you resist. But if I give you the parallel under suspension of disbelief, you take charge of it yourself. In education, we say, I want someone to own it. I want them to become the solution themselves. Well, that's because if they don't, they resist being told. So anyway, so I think the values in psychology, sociology, politics, the point is not understanding that once you understand that the brain does what it does, you don't take things so personally.
Right. Because the way I see it is from my perspective is I sense a predator in the social condition that I'm resisting, right?
Yes.
And I'm offended by it.
Well, the problem is the female predator is seditious. It's not, if it's masculine, you can handle it, but we evolved not to handle the seditious female, right? Because for a variety of reasons. So, I mean, we tolerate the sedition by the female means of undermining. So we just.
Well, I would say previously. No, I don't say going forward. I think that we must.
I don't know. All I know is that my opinion is I don't have an opinion because I'm not sensitive to it. My understanding from people who have opinions and are sensitive to it is that we are getting very close to the cork going off.
The what going off?
The cork popping off. I mean, It's just getting.
It is. The provocations I regard as essentially what Western civilization is being assaulted by what I would call psychospiritual warfare.
Yes, okay? Of course.
And it is yes, the issue is psychological warfare works like this: is I do something and make you do something wrong.
Correct. It's baiting into hazard.
Right, and it's like so. So
it's the females. It's the negative. I'm just going to take it back to basics.
Yeah.
It's the negative aspect of female seduction. So the female seduction is to bait you into a hazard. So they're just doing what's instinctual. And so you can so a mother baits her child into her affection. She baits other women into reciprocal care for her and her children. She baits men into providing resources and if she can, sex, if she wants it. Very rarely, mostly for status.
Right.
So most of the time, a woman is trying to capture better genes than she can hold, and so that's why you have alpha. She tries to have sex with an alpha male and then get support from a beta, and that's just the natural way it's always happened. That's why only 30% of males reproduced and 70% of females.
Okay. So the issue that comes down to, and I believe this is where we are. What's the appropriate response to this condition, which is your deflationary language is the answer to the question.
Well, the answer is that we're walking through the methodology so that I can defend against philosophers. And I can produce a body of law that can be adjudicated infallibly. But the end result is just I've written this up already as a proposal for Congress. We need to have freedom of speech back, and then we need to restore laws because this is what they're doing is a violation of the common law, and they've converted enough to positive law that they have excused it. So we just revert to the empirical law, and we say that this is the case or else. And that's really what's got to happen is we have to have an or else, and you can't get enough conservatives together to say or else. Well, at the point at which conservatives say or else, then we'll get this thing through Congress and we'll negotiate and everything will be fine. But until we get to an or else, the left uses incrementalism and until it's too late. That's what they do. And the Chinese use incrementalism until it's too late. Women use incrementalism until it's too late. The left uses incrementalism until it's too late. So we've been patient and it's getting to be too late.
Yes. The awareness of that is developing quite rapidly, that it's getting to be too late.
I say we got the. Am I going to say this? Okay. I don't want to have anybody killed or burned or put in camps. Okay,
I think that's a good start.
Right,
a good start.
So don't read into what I'm saying. Is that we got rid of the Muslims in Spain, the Jews in England, and the Ottomans from the Balkans, right? It's not an impossible problem. The problem does resist, however, is they leave behind a behavioral record in the cognition of the people that still causes problems. So you need to not only get rid of if you don't understand the problem, you can't get rid of it. Okay? The only way we need to get rid of the problem is to raise the standard of behavior such that we criminalize all the warfare against us, right? And so we just put it back in the law. That's what the law is for, is the incremental suppression of inventions and means of parasitism. So we just put it back in the law and we let the law take it. And the bad people will leave, the good people will transform, and we'll push and because it's in the law and because we'll be teaching it, the behavior will be eradicated from the population. We got rid of supernaturalism with science, right? This is just doing and finishing the scientific revolution and applying it to the non-physical sciences. And so we can use this to clean up the rest of finish the scientific revolution and apply it to the non-physical sciences. So we just finish the empirical revolution and bring this about. And we need to do it before they succeed in destroying all reason.
What a contest, right? It's like
I didn't set out to know. You'd have to be crazy to try to do this. I had no idea. I just did my job.